Hi, everybody. I think we let it sit at 0 there for a second. Sorry about that.
We don't have to refresh. Yay!
We don't have to refresh. We don't know what we're doing, but we are here and we're excited to teach on John chapter 9.
Yes.
John chapter 9. I was looking at Jen both for confirmation and I was like,
it's 9, right?
Did you study John 9? Because that's what I studied. All right. So anyway, as we talked about it this morning.
Yes.
So, but it is short, and so ish.
Shortish.
41 verses, and so don't blink. You might pass it, and it's really all about one story. About this blind guy. It's really his story, and John drags it out a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Most stories don't get this much attention from John or from anybody, but yeah, John drags it out a little bit, and then he continues to explain it, and then Jesus explains it. So
yeah, I think it maybe just kind of gives you, okay, what am I trying to say? You get to see how the religious leaders were acting behind the scenes. I think in this chapter you kind of get an idea of what lengths they would go.
Yeah.
And
how horrible.
Yeah. So I think you get a little bit of inside what their plan was and how they were going to go about doing it.
Yeah. It wasn't a good plan. Let's just say that. It wasn't a good plan. But yeah, it's yes, lots of testing and lots of going back and forth. So I guess we just
start.
We can get right into it, right?
Yep.
If you are joining us, I know sometimes it takes a couple minutes for people to get on. If you're joining us, please say hello. Feel free to share this. Again, we are in John chapter 9 tonight.
Ready?
Ready.
Alrighty, here
Ready,
we go.
Freddie.
We are in verse 1. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Teacher, his disciples asked him, why was this man born blind? Was it a result of his own sins or those of his parents? It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins, Jesus answered. He was born blind so the power of God could be seen in him. All of us must quickly carry out the tasks assigned us by the one who sent me, because there is little time left before the night falls and all work comes to an end. But while I am still here in the world, I am the light of the world. Then he spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and smothered the mud over the blind man's eyes. He told him, go and wash in the pool of Siloam?
Yeah.
Siloam means sent. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. His neighbors and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other, is this the same man, that beggar? Some said he was, and others said no, but he surely looks like him. And the beggar kept saying, I am the same man. They asked, who healed you? What happened? He told them, the man they called Jesus made mud and smoothed it over my eyes and told me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash off the mud. I went and washed, and now I can see. Where is he now? They asked. I don't know, he replied.
I don't know. So I think this is an important tearing down of something that was really big in that day. You can see in verse 2, they're saying, who sinned? This man or his parents? And so they're linking any kind of
misfortune.
Yes.
Yeah.
To sin. And that clearly is not the case, because in verse 3 Jesus says, neither this man nor his parents sinned, but this happened so that the work of God might be displayed in his life. So that's just, I think that really opened up the possibilities and probably very different than what the religious teachers were teaching.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, because they're like, and how does somebody like born blind sin?
Well,
Like,
because
like in the womb?
the parents may have sinned. And
Yeah.
so the transference of the parent's sin onto the child.
It says, but who sinned, this man or his parents?
Yeah.
So anyway,
So
it's
if
just,
the parents led a
sad.
sinful life and they had a blind child, it would be like, of course they did, because, they're sinful people.
Mm-hmm. And then Jesus said, nope, that's actually not the case. And so teaching moment for, for the people here that are with Jesus, and Jesus even gets to, talk a little bit about, as long as it's daytime, we have to do the work of God, right? God the Father. Night's coming when no one can work. While I'm in the world, I'm the light of the world. Right. And so that's just a great, like light a fire under your butt, like he's saying night is coming. And when night is coming, no one can work. Like when it's too late, it's too late, and you don't get to
get a second chance once the end comes. And I mean, I'm sure the people just said, oh yeah, when it's dark we stop working.
Right.
They didn't see the foreshadowing of things to come and things still to come.
Right.
Because the end times, it's still to come.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, some days I think it's already here.
Yeah. Yes,
depending on what you wake up to in the morning.
Yes, we got some things going on, people. Don't the news is a little bit crazy lately, or for the past couple of years. But so here we are. Jesus, this is different than he had healed anybody before.
I don't think this is I don't think this is in any others, is it?
Oh, that's a good question.
Says Mark here, but I don't remember reading it in any other book.
Do you guys know if if it's in any other of the Gospels? Let us know in the comments. I actually did not. I totally forgot to look for it. So, and I don't see,
because on the little aside here it says
gives like
Mark
scripture
8,
reference.
Yeah, it says Mark 8:23, but that was for verse 6. So maybe it is in Mark.
Maybe it is.
I don't know.
So
I'm gonna look.
We're gonna look.
Speak amongst yourselves.
We'll just hang out here for a minute. So, but we know that, or you can imagine. I'll just say it that way. You can imagine that it was part of Jesus's plan that every time he healed somebody, he often did it a little bit differently. Right? There was a man who was blind, and he touched him. There was a man who was blind, and he was nowhere near him and healed him. Right? And then there's this guy who he touched, and and he made the paste, and he told him to go wash. And so if it had always been the same way every single time, then we would probably give the power to the ritual and not the power to the Holy Spirit, to the power of God, because that's the power, not all of this. That's just how Jesus chose at that point, but it's the power of God that did it.
Right. It's not like magical mud.
Not magical mud.
Magical dirt.
No, I'm sure that they sold the dirt after that. They're like, oh, hey, you want this dirt that Jesus used?
Yeah. In Mark, it is talking about a healing of a blind man, but it's the one where this says that he spit on the man in the man's eye, and laid his hands on him and asked him if he could see anything now. I don't think it's the same story. It may just be a different blind
might
man
be a different blind
healed.
man. Yeah.
Because this was in Bethsaida, and I don't know if that's where this pool of Siloam is.
Kind of. But
I don't know. It's a different version that doesn't speak about putting mud in his eyes. It was actually spitting in his eyes, so it could have just been two different blind men.
Yeah,
blind men being healed.
I think we talked about that in Mark as well, but now I cannot remember. So anyway, if you have any insight, give us your insight as far as that goes. But we know that Jesus healed different ways at different times, and that's important, like I said, so that we don't worship the circumstance.
Well, like the I don't know in which gospel it is, but the pool where it was the crippled man, and how they would scamper to the pool because when it would start bubbling up, the legend or was that if the first person who got into the pool
would be healed.
So in some ways, that's kind of, you could see that they were like kind of worshiping this pool.
The pool, yeah. The pool was the solution. It wasn't God. And so, yeah.
And so when Jesus healed him, I believe he tells him that your faith has healed you, I believe. I know he says it a lot, quite a bit, with some of the healings that he does. I think it was that one as well, but I could be wrong. Most of the time I am. Because I get them all confused.
It is a little hard, yeah. So that's why we need your help. So if you put anything in the comments, we would be very, very grateful. But it's pretty interesting if you look at how John tells this story. He put the mud on his eyes, and then he told him to go, and he told him to wash. And so if you think about it, this man never saw Jesus. He never saw the one who healed him, because he was sent away to go wash. Doesn't say that Jesus went with him. So he didn't see who he was, which is important as the story kind of unfolds, because, when the religious leaders start trying to get him for information, he's like, I didn't see him. So
remember, I was blind.
I was blind. I didn't get to see him. And so, strange, mud, spit, washing.
That wouldn't be good right now with COVID.
No. Jesus, don't use that one in 2021. Nobody wants that.
No spitting on anybody.
That's right. But so then here we are in verse 8, and it says his neighbors and those who had formerly seen him begging, they were a little perplexed. They're like,
they thought it couldn't be the same person.
Yeah, so he must have really, of course he could see. That was different. But, there must have been a change.
Yeah, I think probably his whole demeanor changed. If you're blind, you're kind of, the way he walks, the way he moves probably would have changed. If he went to the pool to wash off the mud, he may have washed the rest of him, so maybe he didn't look so much like a beggar in regards to dirtiness. Cleanliness.
Yeah, no, he was probably like, "Oh, look at my clothes."
Plus, he was just healed by the Lord, so I'm sure that had something to do with it as well.
Maybe he was shiny, bright and shiny, right? And so, which I'm sure after an interaction with Jesus Christ, how can you not be changed? And clearly he was, but working from the inside out almost. So, yeah, I thought, that's kind of funny that they're like, some claimed that he was. Others say, nope, it only looks like him. Nope, it looks like Bob, not actually Bob. And some are like, no, that's Bob. But he himself insisted, I am the man. So that kind of put it to rest. But then they're like, well, how did it happen?
Yeah. Give us the play-by-play.
Yeah, which is, we do the same thing, right? If if I see somebody who I haven't seen in a long time, and they've lost a lot of weight, or or something about them has changed or been healed. These are the questions we ask as human beings. How did this happen? Like, how did this happen? Is it a pill? Can I buy that pill? What, how does this work? Because we want this. We want this too. We're drawn to this. And he said, well, the man they called Jesus, and he went through it. He said, so I went and I washed, and then I could see. And then they said, where is he? And he said, I don't know. I actually never saw him. So I heard him, but I didn't see him. And so that is kind of an interesting aside, because that way when they're saying, when the religious leaders are pressing him, he can really say, I don't know, like I can't pick him out of a lineup.
Mm-hmm.
He sent me away to wash before the healing was completed. So yes. You got anything else?
No. Except my hair is bugging me, so if you see me doing this a lot, it's because it's in my face.
I get you.
We'll pick up in verse 13 of John 9. Then they took the man to the Pharisees. Now, as it happened, Jesus had healed the man on a Sabbath. The Pharisees asked the man all about it. So he told them, he smoothed the mud over my eyes, and when it was washed away, I could see. Some of the Pharisees said, this man Jesus is not from God, for he is working on the Sabbath. Others said, but how could an ordinary sinner do such miraculous signs? So there was a deep division of opinion among them. Then the Pharisees once again questioned the man who had been blind and demanded, this man who opened your eyes, who do you say he is? The man replied, I think he must be a prophet. The Jewish leaders wouldn't believe he had been blind, so they called in his parents. They asked them, is this your son? Was he born blind? If so, how can he see? His parents replied, we know this is our son and that he was born blind, but we don't know how he can see or who healed him. He is old enough to speak for himself. Ask him. They said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders, who had announced that anyone saying Jesus was the Messiah would be expelled from the synagogue. That's why they said, he is old enough to speak for himself. Ask him. So for the second time, they called in the man who had been blind and told him, give glory to God by telling the truth, because we know Jesus is a sinner. I don't know whether he is a sinner, the man replied, but I know this, I was blind and now I can see. But did he do? They asked. How did he heal you? But what did he do? They asked. How did he heal you? Look, the man exclaimed, I told you once. Didn't you listen? Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? Then they crushed him and said, you are his disciple? But we are disciples of Moses. We know God spoke to Moses, but as far as this man, we don't know anything about him. Why, that's very strange, the man replied. He healed my eyes, and yet you don't know anything about him? Well, God doesn't listen to sinners, but he is ready to hear those who worship him and do his will. Never since the world began has anyone been able to open the eyes of someone born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't do it. You were born in sin, they answered. Are you trying to teach us? And they threw him out of the synagogue.
Wow. It's kind of juicy, right? It's kind of a cool story. Kind of juicy. So
I like how he kind of like threw down with him.
He
kind of
snarky,
was like,
yeah.
I already told you.
You weren't listening.
I'm not changing the story.
He's like, yeah, and then he's like, you want to be his disciple? Is that it? You want to be his follower? So, yeah, he was a little.
He kind of incited them because I could see them just smashing their head. We are the disciples of Moses.
Yes. So
I
they
just
brought
had that
him in.
whole like movie going on in my head while I was reading it.
Absolutely, and I think John did a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, I really feel like I got to see
He was a fly on the
scene.
wall.
Yeah.
He was a little fly on the wall.
Yeah.
I think it wasn't this particular story, but in the show The Chosen that I've spoken about before, which is a great show about the life of Jesus, it kind of takes some of these stories, and because we know some of these stories so well, that the director takes it from a different angle, like so from a different perspective. than you would think sometimes.
Like from the the fly on the wall.
Yeah, and it's really good. But one scene that I remember is when Jesus and Nicodemus are on the rooftop, and they're having at night, and they're having this discussion, and that's when he reveals to him he's the Messiah, and so it's a great
be born
scene.
again, yes.
But John and I think another disciple in the scene are like on the stairs, and they can hear what's going on, but they're not involved. And like John is like in his little notebook.
There you
so
go.
I just that's what this reminds me of
Yeah.
you know, like John maybe just being outside the door writing the notes down.
Well, things weren't soundproofed.
Correct.
So.
And it sounded like they were a little angry. There was a lot of exclamation points in there. So
or
I doubt
you know,
it was quiet.
Yeah, and that kind of stuff probably travels as well.
Right.
Like that kind of story that probably travels really well. So that that it gets told over and over a little bit as well. But they bring him in. They make him say exactly what happened.
Right.
He's like, all right, here, this and this and this, and then right away they're like, he did it on the Sabbath, so this guy
Broke the law already.
not from God. Yeah, not from God. Like he doesn't know, and he should know how. We don't heal people on.
He's
the
Jewish.
Sabbath.
He should know these things.
Yeah, come on, Jesus. We you leave people to suffer for another 12 hours or so, and then you can heal them. Like that doesn't even make sense. But I think, Jen, do you remember why healing on the Sabbath was illegal?
You're not allowed to work on the Sabbath at all. Any kind of work. I mean, in Scripture, it has said, even carrying a handkerchief was considered working.
Crazy.
But I think in previous Gospels, Jesus kind of told them, like, hello, if your oxen got trapped in a ditch, you're gonna tell me that you're just gonna leave it there
to suffer and die?
No,
that's your livelihood.
They're gonna get it out.
Yeah.
So it was just showing them the hypocrisy of, if you're gonna be doing good, you're doing good. You're not working to get money. You're not doing things that are against God.
Right. Yeah.
Then what's the big deal?
Yeah, and people are so much more important than oxen or whatever.
Healing somebody, I think, would be okay with God. Since actually God did it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we get it. Maybe like, what's that called? Like
going
surgery.
Fishing and,
Yeah.
Getting paid for services, I think, would probably be a no-no. Mm-hmm. So, you're not going to plow your fields to get money. You're not going to go fishing to take fish to the market to get paid. So I think that is more of maybe the guidelines that God was talking about.
Yeah.
Of, to rest and to not make money, not overexert yourself.
Yeah, I think to literally give your body rest,
Mm-hmm.
And I know that, I mean, we're here in Southern California. I don't know where you are, but, because we have good weather, basically the whole year, we can run 7 days a week.
Yeah. Some people do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, you probably also, I don't think there needs to be like a medical study to say that, like, if you take a day off a week, like, your health is going to be better. Your mental health is going to be better.
Right.
Maybe you can release some of that tension and just release. Give your body, literally your muscles, especially if you're working like physical labor, you give your body a rest. Then you have time. You have that day to check in with God and to worship God. Spend with your family. So that even like your family doesn't get like too crazy, too far. You've got one day at least with your kids a week where you can really spend time. So
I think in this country, the 5-day work week was, I think, started in the 30s. I want to say something. It wasn't that long ago.
Right.
That it was 7 days. You
7
worked
days.
every day.
Yeah.
And a lot of it back in time, there was a lot of farming. There were
pioneers.
it was more agricultural type of lifestyle, and so the 5-day work week isn't that old of a concept, and I think it was implemented for workers to that you can't work your staff to the bone.
Right, it's not good for them, and if you probably get more out of them if you don't work them as much, and that way you only have to pay them for 5 days. Let's be honest. But and I don't know how they did it, because they too had like cows to milk and stuff like that. I don't believe that on the Sabbath they like didn't milk their cows or their goats or whatever.
I don't know.
That could be uncomfortable. So not entirely sure how all of those rules work. But anyway, the Sabbath was not built. The Sabbath was built for God. It was not necessarily built for built for legalism, and that is surely what it became, as many things do. Right? We see it's in the Bible, so we just do it. We have to do it. Sometimes we don't even ask why we have to do it, and we just embrace the rule because I just like to follow rules. Like, give me a rule, right. I'll follow it. Sometimes they don't make sense, but I'll follow that anyway because somebody told me to. So anyway, brought him in. They're talking about the Sabbath. The man who got his sight back, he said he is a prophet. But then they're like, we still really don't believe that you were blind. And, I mean, when you want to pick a story apart, you totally can. And this is kind of what they were doing. Brought the parents in. The parents were like, he was born blind. Yep. He was born blind. And it says in verse 22 that they were afraid of the Jews, that they would be excommunicated, basically. And so that's why they kept saying, well, he's of age, he's an adult, why don't you ask him? Just ask him. And, but you have to remember that being excommunicated at this point it's not just being kicked out of the synagogue. You're also kicked out of, like, the social aspect and the economic aspect, then all of a sudden your business won't be.
It's almost like being a leper.
Yes. Excommunicated has like a power. Has a power to it, right? Like,
right, because everything kind of surrounded the synagogue.
And this culture, and then they say, get out of the culture.
Right.
Move to a desert island. We don't care. We don't want to talk to you. It is a big deal. So I can see why they were afraid, number one, but I also can see why, they're like, we're pleading the fifth. No comment. Ask our son. He's an adult. But yes, we'll verify that he was blind at birth. But then we say nothing. We say nothing. So they bring him back. They bring the blind man back again. How awesome. So this is in verse 24. We're still in John chapter 9, verse 24. And, they're like, you need to give glory to God, because we know that this Jesus character is a sinner. And the blind man, I don't think he said anything wrong. He just said, I don't know if he's a sinner or not. The one thing I do know is that I was blind and now I can see. And that basically, I mean, maybe you've heard in your church, maybe you've heard testimonies that, stretch on for 20 minutes and, there may be a little bit more embellishment going on. But this is your testimony if you're a Christian. This is my testimony of, being a Christian. I was blind and now I see. And that is a great testimony, just right there. And so I don't think the formerly known as blind man, I don't think he said anything wrong. And
No.
and then and then they're like, how? So what did he do, and how did he do it? And that's what we were laughing about. And he was like, I already told you. I already told you, like, you weren't listening. You weren't listening. And that's when he gets a little snarky and says, why do you want to hear it? Do you want to become his disciple too? And he knew that's maybe when he crossed the line. So, yeah, you
I
can,
guess we would
sarcasm.
we would have had to hear the tone of it, because maybe he was like, oh, do you want to be his, it depends on
Maybe.
how he delivered it. I
Yeah.
think it depends on the tone.
I'm reading
sarcasm because I talk sarcasm.
Uh-huh.
That's my language.
Yeah.
So I see it that way. But I could see him also being just like excited, like, oh, you want to know about him so you can follow him too. And
but then it says, in
but
28,
like, no.
They hurled insults. And so yours, I think, said that they pressed him, they crushed him.
They crushed him.
They crushed him.
Then they crushed him.
Yeah. So they were not happy, I guess, which is the other reason that we kind of read sarcasm into it. Like, he incited them to anger a little bit. And then they're saying, and then it's like a children's thing. You're his disciple. Why do you want to be? No, you're his disciple. Like, anyway, wow. Okay, is this where we're going? And we're the good disciples. We're the disciples of Moses. And we know that God spoke to Moses, but for this guy, we don't even know where he comes from. So they want to just tear Jesus apart. And so and the man says, that's remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he healed me, right? He healed me.
Well, they don't know anything about him, but they are adamant he's a sinner, but they don't know anything about him.
And this, and this man who, remember, was like hours prior a beggar, blind, unable to work, unable, an outcast of society. But he schools them.
Yes.
Right here. He schools them in verse 30. And he's saying, so let me get this straight. Like, you don't know where he comes from, but he healed me. He says, we know that God doesn't listen to sinners. So he's telling the religious leaders what's what. That is a little bold. He listens to the godly man who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't do anything.
Yep.
That is some really great logic.
Yeah.
Given by the beggar to, the upper class, to the educated religious leaders.
He must have listened when he was begging around the synagogue.
He must have heard something.
He must have been listening.
He put it together, and, and
he couldn't see. All he could do was hear.
And he listened. Yeah. So that's kind of interesting because he, and there's some boldness here. He surely could have kind of rolled over like his parents did and just said, I don't know who healed me. I don't know how it happened. It was just great. And now I can see, but I don't really know. Haven't seen the guy. Don't know who he is. He could have done all of that. Instead, he took the time to school them, to point out their own hypocrisy and the holes in their assumption that Jesus is just a sinner. But of course, 34. Then they replied, they're going back and forth. You were steeped in sin at birth. Again, not his fault. That's so silly. How dare you lecture us? And they threw him out. They excommunicated him for being bold. And again, that was a really hard thing. Thankfully, he never really enjoyed like the comforts of society and having a job and all that. You know what I mean? Right. So being kicked out may not have been a big deal.
Well, he could have just moved somewhere else.
He could have. he's a whole new guy.
We don't have Facebook and all that stuff. They wouldn't have known. If
Yeah.
you moved on to another town or village, they possibly would not have known.
Right.
He was.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he's not, like wearing a tattoo like I used to be blind. It's like, yeah, no, he's just the new guy in town with perfect vision, for however old he is. He's got perfect vision because I'm sure that Jesus healed him perfectly. He didn't, give him back his vision and give him like astigmatism or something. So I'm sure he did pretty well. So,
but what I kind of like too is, back in, verse 3, how Jesus had said he was born blind so the power of God could be seen in him. And I just love that he takes a stand for Jesus, and he kind of he stood up to the religious leaders.
He really did. Really
did. I was like, aw.
Yeah, you can see the contrast between what his parents did and what he did, and he was speaking truth. I mean, you can really hear it; it really makes sense, and so that's pretty amazing. So now he gets to meet the guy who healed him. Yay. So let's finish this up here.
All right, we are picking back up in verse 35 of John 9. When Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man and said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" The man answered, "Who is he, sir, because I would like to?" "You have seen him," Jesus said, "and he is speaking to you." "Yes, Lord," the man said, "I believe." I just got goosebumps.
Yeah.
Sorry. And he worshiped Jesus. Then Jesus told him, "I have come to judge the world. I have come to give sight to the blind and to show those who think they see that they are blind." The Pharisees who were standing there heard him and asked, "Are you saying we are blind?" "If you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty," Jesus replied, "but you remain guilty because you claim you can see."
So Jesus is on the scene. But, it's very kind, right? Jesus hears about the brouhaha and how he got kicked out. And so he goes and finds him and kind of completes it, for this blind man, because obviously there's a lot more that could be illuminated than just his sight. Like he can really be a witness for Jesus Christ for all of the right reasons, not just, the guy's got miracles on lock. There's more to Jesus.
Right.
He's not just the miracle man.
Yeah, and he's not just a prophet. He is the Son of Man. He is the Messiah.
Yeah, so, and clearly this guy knew a little bit about that as well. So, do you believe in the Son of Man? And great question. And obviously in the synagogue, they were taught that the Messiah is coming. They're taught, that.
Did they give him this distinction of Son of Man? Is that, I know it doesn't say Messiah.
Right.
But is that the term, it translated into English, obviously, but the term that would have been used to indicate the Messiah?
Yeah, okay. Yeah. It's one of the terms.
Got it.
So there were lots of terms, right?
Well, he has a lot of names.
He does.
Has a lot of names.
And maybe that's part of the confusion, right? Is that in the Old Testament there's a heap load of names. I mean, in Isaiah alone, there's so many names, but the Son of Man is one of them.
Okay.
And so he says, "Do you believe in the Son of Man? Who is he? Tell me, so I can believe in him." And because clearly they're not, they're waiting for him to come in the flesh, which Jesus was and is, right here in this story here. So, and so then Jesus says, "Yep, well, you're talking with him right now." So, that's the English equivalent of going, "Yeah, it's me." And the guy said, "I believe." And he had no reason not to believe, right? He believed, and it says that he worshiped him. So the kind of the shocking thing is in verse 40, it says that there were Pharisees who were with him. I think your thing in verse 40, it says they were nearby.
Yeah.
So it's that
Who were
earshot thing.
Standing there, heard him. Yeah.
Yeah, that earshot thing. There are no soundproof booths, soundproof tents, soundproof buildings. Everything was, not like that. So,
well, and I think they followed Jesus wherever he went. So wherever the people gathered, where Jesus was in the midst, the Pharisees were also.
Yeah. I mean, and probably not just entirely for bad reasons,
they needed
curious.
to know. Curious, and I think they wanted to know what he was saying and what he was telling people, and was he. I think about it like this, and we have to give them a little bit of a break, because their job is to make sure that the people are not led astray.
Yeah.
That's what pastors, priests, chaplains, ministers, that's their job today.
Yeah.
That's their job, is to not lead people astray. Now, there are some that do, and it's very unfortunate, because the people don't know that they are being led astray, and it's very sad, but that was their job. So if there's this new guy coming around who is doing everything the opposite, practically, right? Of what they've been taught, what they've known their whole life, this is what they've learned and what they have been taught, and it's so a part of their being, of who they are. And there's this guy who is throwing it all in their faces and telling them they're hypocrites and horrible people, and
you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, I could see how they would want to be wherever he is to hear what's he going to say this time, because they're concerned. I mean, obviously about their own selves as well, their power and all of that being taken away from them. But I think there's a bit of it too, like, we don't want all these people to be led astray.
Well, you've got to, as leaders, you've got to clean up the mess.
Right.
So I get it. I get it. We do have to watch out. Bible tells us, right? Even in the last days, there's going to be false teachers.
Oh, yeah.
And they're going to tell us what we want to hear.
And there are going to be
tickling our itchy ears,
So many people that are deceived. Christians, believers, people that have been brought up in the church their whole life are going to be deceived.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we don't want to take that lightly, because they did have a job to do. But, part of Jesus's job also was that he needed to expose them for what they were. Mama Rose says they wanted to get the goods on him and not use their positions in the people's eyes. They broke over 200 laws to get him. Wow.
Or more.
Yeah.
Well, they broke all the Mosaic laws. Practically all of them.
Yeah, no. Slander, murder.
Yeah.
They
lie
after lie after lie. Yeah. False testimony, false witness, which means that they weren't, putting God first, because they're busy trying to take the people down. So we're in John chapter 9. We're here at the end. These last few verses of John chapter 9.
And I hope some, and I think, we know with Nicodemus and with Joseph of Arimathea, they didn't go along with this group of Pharisees and religious leaders. They were in the group, but they didn't.
Not of the group.
They didn't align with the group.
That's right. And even it had said, where did we read that? Verse 16. They were divided, because here's this great miracle, and they're like, oh, there's a sinner, and they're like, yeah, but how does a sinner pull off that? And the blind man said the same thing. So they were divided, and we see that today, right? Whenever something goes on, we've got Christians who are divided over abortion. We've got Christians who are, divided over a lot of things.
Death penalty. And
yes, absolutely.
Lots of different social issues.
Yeah, and so
even biblical issues too, if you want to get down to it.
Absolutely.
Christians debate what the Bible interpretation should be, and theological debates. And,
a lot, yes.
Right.
Calvinist, Wesleyan. So I think division is normal. I mean, God gave us brains, and we're processing the information that we have. Sometimes the information that we have is skewed, and that's where we're building our opinions from. Or we're building them on the backs of false teachers again.
Right. And I think it's also perspective, how you were brought up, what life, what the life you've led, what your childhood was like can what's the word I'm looking for? Can
shape, skew,
shape. Yes, can shape your outlook on things and
opinions on things. Yeah,
and that's why,
especially politics.
Oh yeah, and just social issues in general, and that's why it's so important to read the Word, because it's fairly clear. I think, to me, when I read it, I'm like, it's pretty clear, especially if you have a red letter Bible. What Jesus's words are pretty clear. There's no misinterpretation. I know, like Revelation, it's almost, sometimes you feel like John was on an acid trip.
Yeah.
It's very, there's a lot of imagery in it that he was trying to, give us a description of things he had never seen before, and putting them into context of his understanding of the world. So, it's kind of difficult to put that together, but
it's very difficult, but that's exactly what Jesus says in 39 with these guys right there, either, like listening, or they're just right there. And he says, "For judgment I have come into this world." That's kind of a bold statement in and of itself. For judgment I have come into this world, so that the blind will see, and those who see will become blind. And, and that just, to me, that just talks about like that upside down kingdom that Jesus instituted here on earth. We thought, that he would be like the pinnacle, and instead he really put himself at the bottom as a servant, and and showed all of us a much different way to serve than a king or a conqueror,
which is what they were expecting,
which is what they wanted. Can you read that? You have
Sure.
your glasses on?
I have them on this week. No, they didn't, but I think even those that believed he was different were afraid of losing their place in society, so being slow to go against the leaders. Correct.
Yeah, and we see that in the blind man's parents.
The parents. They didn't want to shake the boat. They didn't want to get called out. They didn't want to lose their status in the community,
their business, their family, their, when you get excommunicated.
Right. And we know, you may not know if you haven't studied, but in Revelation, that is what is to come for Christians, for believers, is there's going to be a time where you are either going to stand up and lose everything for God or not. And that may be the final deciding factor of where you end up.
Yeah,
possibly.
And it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you something. So
being a Christian it's not here yet. That's all I'll say. It's not here yet. It is in other parts of the world. It's
coming our way.
It's bad to be a Christian.
Coming to a country near you soon. But and so then the Pharisees get indignant, right? And in 40, and they're like, "What? Are we blind too? Are you talking about me? Are you talking to me?" Yes, they got indignant, and then in 41 he says, "If you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty of sin. Like you didn't know better. But you claim you can see. so your guilt remains. So this is important because, obviously they know the Torah, they know the laws, they know the Lord, they know a personality of the character of God in the Old Testament, and they just, they just are blocking out everything that Jesus is trying to tell them and show them.
Well, they're conspiring. Not just with Jesus. I'm sure they were conspiring their whole lives, adult lives anyways, that
Right.
as these religious leaders, I think they've even, what do I want to say? Whoop. I might be stepping on something. Hopefully we're still live. I think
So far, so good.
they were conspiring, like this set of religious leaders were against this set of religious leaders, and it was political. So like this group wanted such and such rules made, so this group was opposed to it. It's like it is today. It's
Power plays
all the time, and so
Yeah.
there was conspiring, there was behind the back deals and all this kind of stuff going on, which wasn't supposed to be happening according to the laws.
But there's nothing new under the sun. So here we are. And it was happening. I think that's Rich.
Hi, Rich.
Hey, Rich. He's talking about food and gravy. Good gravy. Here's our Charlie Brown reference. Hello, girls. You both look great.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're just happy when we're talking about the scriptures.
Yes.
So maybe that's if we glow, that's why we're talking about Jesus. We're new creations, as it says. So in Acts. But yeah, it's, Jesus he's just speaking the truth. Nobody wants to hear it. And
well, the Pharisees for sure don't want to hear it.
The Pharisees.
Some people don't want to heir it because I'm sure they're like, what?
Yeah.
You're nutty.
It was rocking their boat. It was rocking all of their power plays and their conspiracies and their backroom deals. Who's this guy? Like we never allowed for this to come in and shake things up. We need to get rid of him.
I think it's if you want to put it into today's context, you could think of it as like a takeover. Like say your company was taken over and they bring in this new person who wants to change everything the way you've always done it. And
nobody likes that.
Nobody likes it. Nobody wants it. And, the company, the people that are working there that got taken over are like, how are we going to get rid of this guy?
Exactly.
Is kind of how you could think about it in today's world.
Absolutely.
Obviously, this was on a much bigger scale, but I could see that happening for sure.
Yeah. And again, like they on some level, like there hasn't been a prophet for 400 years. They haven't had a time of correction, which is what John the Baptist was doing. And of course, Jesus was doing too. But yeah, they hadn't had a correction. And so they had gone off on a kind of a tangent, and that legalism had really been able to flourish. And that's what Jesus was like, none of that works. None of that works. You really need to be a servant of God, and I'm here to also kind of show you stuff. So
to serve the people, not yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to read that one?
They were even under the temple in the Old Testament worshiping false gods. Yep.
Yeah, like they're covering their bases. Well, we got,
just in case.
We got God, but also have to have, like this wooden idol and this metal idol, and talk to them just to,
cover all the bases, make sure that, one of these got to work.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, the rest of them might be mad when I die, but but the one, if I tell each of them that they're special, then maybe I'll have a great place in eternity. So yeah, so that is John chapter 9, and like I said, it's really just one story about one incident about this healing, and then the reaction to the healing, and then Jesus's reaction their reaction. So,
Teaching about spiritual blindness.
yes, absolutely. But I feel like you said, I think we really got a wide angle lens view of what the religious leaders were up to. And we got to really see into the moment because there was a lot of descriptive language.
Well, and they didn't want to hear the truth. He's like, I told you the truth. Why do you want to hear it again?
Yeah.
They weren't interested in the truth. They were only interested on what they could gain to put Jesus away.
Yeah, because he was messing with their system. So he had to go. And
I'm sure that happens still today.
Yes.
Obviously, Jesus isn't here, but I'm sure with other persons that stuff happens all the time.
Or other churches, let's be honest, we've all seen churches, where the nastiness tries to take over. And, and there are those servants of God. I think of Paul's dad, and he often would not fight for himself because it's like, no, God will fight my battles, and I don't need to prove that I'm right, or and I was like, what? You need to tell them, what? Like, oh, why? My immaturity, and and just watching him, literally watching God fight his battles, and it's like, that actually works. So,
and it's in all aspects of life. It's in political sphere. It's in workplace,
marriage,
parenting.
Marriage.
Yeah, it's in all aspects of life, and that's why when people say that this little book here doesn't speak to today, they're not listening and they're not seeing.
It really speaks to today. Just saying. So. Well, we're super glad you were with us. John chapter 9. We will be back next Tuesday for John chapter 10.
Yep.
Tomorrow night we are in 2 Corinthians, and we're in the teens. I think we are in 11 or 12.
Find out tomorrow.
You'll find out tomorrow. I'm looking. I didn't use this book last week, so I don't have it all highlighted up. But you'll find out tomorrow. It's 7:00, and then Thursday at 7:00, Genesis is happening. The study of Genesis, and it's always amazing. So please, please, please tune in for that. Sunday at 5:00, you can catch our worship service, and we're super excited to have you with us. And then we just repeat next week: Tuesday at 7, Wednesday at 7, Thursday at 7. And Mama Rose says,
bye, ladies. Have a good night.
Good night. I thought, I need to wear my glasses, don't I? So God bless you guys. Thank you so much for joining us. Hope we made some sense. If we didn't, we would,
let us know.
Put it in the comments. We confused you about this, or we didn't know what we're talking about we want to grow too. So, so we're always grateful for, we got some feedback tonight. Always grateful for that. It makes it really feel interactive, and we're very grateful. So thanks, y'all.
Good night.
Good night.